This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call the meeting in order. If you will all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Termination of quorum. My apologies.
You all have a packet in front of you, and in it, you've got the agenda, and then the minutes are the second one there, which would be the first order of business.
Eve, I have an administrative question. May I ask?
Sure.
Corey? How many members do you have total?
Yep.
For the vote?
Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 voting members.
Is that normal?
That's the full quantity now. We just have a new appointment, Kelly Spear
We
here.
ordinarily have 9.
We do
You usually have an odd number. That's why I was curious.
6, 7, 8. Yeah, I'm not a voting member.
So there's number 8.
No, 8 without me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I excluded Kurt from the count. But I mean, this is the.
We have
That's weird.
just
curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all from what it usually is now.
So
I thought it was a
there's a
7-member
potential.
board according to your ordinance.
So there's one too many of us here.
Oh,
I'm kicked
That
out on
was
the first
my-
day I'm here.
no,
No, we have two resident Democrat, 2 resident Republican, 2 town representatives, a 2-mile Democrat, and a 2-mile Republican.
7, 8.
There really is 8.
Okay. As long as that's what your ordinance says. This seems unusual.
I thought we had 9. Well, I think we used to count. We did, I think.
But to Kurt's point, if he feels there's an issue with that, certainly at a later time, you can look into it and advise, and things can be restructured. So it's a stronger possibility for a tie. So let's all get along.
Yeah, right. No ties today. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's right,
This
yeah.
seems strange.
Do you need a pen, Corey?
Yeah, somebody's got an extra. Thank you.
Lost my pen if I want. Do you need this?
You have to bear with me because this is my first one. I think I'm on my 3rd or 4th meeting in general, so I'll do the best I can. So we need to do approval minutes right now. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yes. And you could ask for a motion or something like that, right? Vicki knows too.
Make a motion for the approval of minutes from the Wednesday, May 7th, 2025 meeting.
I'll make a motion for that.
Second.
Vicki.
All those in favor? Or it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, we still have to go.
We still have to go through it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Any opposed? Did you? Yeah. 0.
Opposed.
Okay.
There is no old business, so I guess we're on a new business, and, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to introduce our new member. As council president, these positions aren't easy to fill, and so I appreciate when all of you have said yes. This one's been empty for a little while, and Zane Gray, who's another council member, had suggested Kelly Spear. Kelly is a resident, lives on Elm Street, and she works at Noble REMC with Zane. And so I knew when I talked to her on the phone, she was very eager, and I do apologize. This kind of seems like you're being thrown to the wolves. This is a pretty big
Yeah,
thing
this is a
tonight,
lot, so
but-
it's good.
but-
Yeah.
we walk each other through. And so before we just very briefly introduce ourselves, in all fairness to her and whatever else she might want to add, I do want to thank Corey. He is relatively new to the Plan Commission, but he did step up and offer at the last meeting to be president. So absolutely we'll bear with you because we've all been there, and anyone who can do better can have the job, correct?
That's correct.
So Kelly, you want to share just a little bit about, and then we'll introduce ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I work at Noble RMC. I've been there about 7 years now. I'm director of communications there, so work with Kevin Dreibelbis, if you know him. Most people do around here. And you know, it's always a goal of ours and our employees to do as much as we can for the community. And so I've been looking for an opportunity. When this came up, I'm so glad Zane put my name forward. But yeah, and I live on Elm Street with my husband and a almost 2-year-old. So it's a lot of adventure.
I'm Vicki Jellison. I currently serve as the council president, and I'm one of the 2 seats that the town's employees hold on this board. So we'll just start with Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Cornish. I've lived in Albion about 24 years now, and I work up at Doc's Hardware. I may have waited on you, I don't know.
I'm guessing so.
And that's really about it.
I'm Dwayne Simpson. I've lived here since 1963. Previously served on the redevelopment committee several years back. Retired from the state highway and Parkview EMS.
I'm Mark Hunter. I've lived in Albion since I was 14, 15, and I'm a dispatcher for Noble County.
Kurt Bachman, town attorney.
Corey Miller, street cemetery superintendent.
I'm Sherry Correa. I grew up here, flew the coop, came back with a husband and a kid, and I've been here ever since. Love it. I'm very thankful that I am included in this business.
Jason Koontz, lived in the area for, I don't even know, since 2015, 10 years, 11 years. I'm also on the BZA, so it's a dual role for me. So very new to this.
Steve Gunty, town manager, been on board since August of last year. Came from Munster, Indiana, right near the Chicago area there. And of course, since this is a night of unconventional things, I've got a complaint since the attorney's here. Corey's making me call him president every time I see him in the hallway.
And you shall.
Okay, I guess we're moving on to new business, and thank goodness Steve has kind of offered to kind of steer the vehicle on this one. So Steve, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. We appreciate it a lot, Corey. We talked about it just to try to make the evening go quick of sorts. And so what you have before you is packets of information. I think the primary one of the one with the SAM letterhead. SAM is the technical consultant for AAC, Albion Apostolic Church. And they've done a wonderful job, by the way, as the church has, in presenting us with the information requested. I'll go through that in a little while. But you have that's the letter of introduction. And then, actually, I got out of order here. You had the agenda, you had the minutes, you had, my report is in there, which summarizes what we came up with as an internal technical committee. We reviewed everything in like an advanced run of this group here, the same process they're going to kind of take you through somewhat. And we found that everything was in good shape, was in order with the project. I indicated that in my little report. And the main issue was stormwater drainage. And they said they would address it, and in fact, they have. And it's interesting, I'll point out as we go through the required documents, most of the sheets that they produce technically are about stormwater management. So anyways, the items of relevance then for tonight are that SAM letterhead. It just introduces the project. He has also given you a full, complete plan set behind the one that we distributed separately tonight, so we can consult that as needed. And then you'll be looking at the thing with the circled heading guidelines. That's the section in the zoning ordinance 11.6 that is kind of our Bible for tonight. No sacrilege intended there, Pastor. And then the last thing is waiver request, that they've asked for two areas, a landscaping standard and a buffering standard that is pointed out in the zoning ordinance to be waived, and for rightful reason, and we'll get into that as we go through. So the intent tonight, or the process, I believe, would be that we would go through these guidelines, and if you look on the second page, we're going to be going through, well, it lists, all the checklists are everything that they've submitted, the required materials. It's on page 200 of that handout, the second page of the guidelines section. And, you know, I've checked it all. They're in very good shape as far as everything required. It was only, they're asking the waiver under item letter F, landscaping plan, requesting that be waived, and for reasons that, you know, it kind of applied to, you know, more of a commercial project, something in the industrial zone. They're quite isolated out there. Whatever they would do, we know it's going to be in good taste, and they have very little neighbors to where it would be an issue anyway. And then moving on in the checklist, the only thing that's forthcoming, according to their engineer, and I'll introduce their team here shortly, is a lighting plan. And other than that, you can see the stormwater design plan, letter G, there's 5 sheets that address that. And so very comprehensive, the work that they've put into this. And then the last thing, their letter K, the street plan and profile, I've kind of judged that it's not applicable because they have a private entrance and their street would be private, their parking lot is private. So it doesn't really, I think that envisioned something a little different type of development. But of course, you can look at that and ultimately decide. And then they have a utility plan that's pretty comprehensive. A gas and electric portion of it would also be forthcoming. Now, that being said, their team consists of Pastor Brad Jeans, who has been their pastor for many, many years. Pardon me? 9 years, thank you. And they're expanding, they're relocating from their current site to the 22-acre site, you know, kitty cornered from here, you know, just down the block. And their main entrance, though, would be off of Progress Drive on a street that was renamed for them as Apostolic Drive. Their new address is 412 Apostolic Drive. Pardon me?
Way.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I like
Sorry.
that
I've seen
Apostolic Way as well.
everybody's listening. Apostolic Way and 412 Apostolic Way. And then their engineers here tonight from the company SAM, which stands for Surveying and Mapping, and it is Ben Stanley. And so with that, I think I want to also say the pastor has said he really needs to leave a little before 7 o'clock. He's got a prior commitment, something going on right now that's big at their church. And so anyway, his departure, he would want everything to continue, he said, so that, you know, we could take advantage of the time of everybody here and his engineer. With that, I guess I've made a suggestion that we go through we could either go through the material that was required to be submitted, or we could just do a Q&A on that section. That's the required materials on page 200, and there's a list all the way from letters A through letter N. And I just went through that, really saying it's 95% completed. And there is a waiver that they're requesting in the landscaping section. Or we could, at some point tonight, we need to go through the standards for review. That's the criteria we'll use, which is on page 204. And it lists, I believe, 16 criteria, letters A through letter P, where I guess I would suggest that we would go through those one by one and say, did they meet it? Did they not? What's the sentiment? And then Kurt can advise us, our attorney, as to, if we need to take a vote on each one, or how do we decide that what we're deciding on each letter. And so that's the process I'm suggesting. Now, I've excluded the technical team here from the church now, but it's really now their turn to say, maybe they want to give an intro, and I think that would all be fair and fitting unless anybody objects that I turn it over and let them give a blurb, or to whatever degree they want to say, here's what we need to explain, or we'll take you through this, or anything to that nature.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Ben Stanley, civil engineer for surveying and mapping, and hired by the Apostolic Church to represent them, do the civil site plans and survey work for the team. Just looking through this checklist, I wanted to mention a couple of things in terms of the required materials. Looking at page 201, I think we've done all that. Actually, the only thing that, like he said, we haven't done is the landscaping plan, which we're trying to get a waiver from. I wanted to mention also the stormwater drainage. There was extensive discussion about that at the last meeting, and we've come up with a solution, and we've talked with the neighbor to get an easement. He's very willing to work with us, and willing to give us, access, to put a pipe across his property to drain our drainage pond. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet. We've got something shown just to show an intent, but the size of that pipe or the exact direction of that pipe or length of it is a little bit, I guess, still being worked out, because there's, I guess, some existing drainage tiles on that property that we may be able to tie into, but we're not exactly sure where those are at the moment. So further discussion on that point. Lighting plan is forthcoming. I've referred Brad to a lighting company out of Fort Wayne that we've worked with in the past on a lot of projects like this, that will produce a lighting plan for us. And so that's just being worked on. Erosion sediment control. Utility, I want to mention utility plan too. There is one thing that's going to definitely need to change on the utility plan, and that is right now I'm still showing a 2-inch water service line. I think there was a discussion the last time, and I just had failed to get it changed. I think we're going to end up putting in a 6-inch water service line due to the need for fire suppression in the future. So yeah, so those types of changes. But yeah, the plans are in a state that they're in right now, which is still in flux a little bit. But hopefully you guys can see the direction that we're heading and that we're wanting to comply with whatever. The only two areas would be the buffering and the landscaping. So.
And I've included those two sections of the ordinance. Section 7.7 is the landscape under waiver requested, and it's fairly lengthy, and it's basically saying how should a company decorate the site, and then the other area is the buffering. 7.8, it's how should they buffer and screen any noxious uses or things that are unsightly from the general public, the neighbors, and so forth.
Can I say something?
Yes, Pastor.
Rick will continue to farm everything that we don't develop, so that's part of the plans. So
Of the acreage that you purchased?
and we've offered that to him for as long as he farms. That's the farm. This might help with some of the overall scheme of the property.
Yeah.
Steve, you've referred to a meeting. So am I correct in thinking that they've already met with like our department heads and stuff?
Correct. That with myself, Corey as street superintendent, Terry as water superintendent, Scott for police, and Bob for fire. All, and we call it the technical team for the, I think we call it referred to as preliminary site plan review, which is done on a staff level through my office as plan administrator.
Okay, and that's the homework that leads up to all of this?
Yes, it was kind of to be a dry run and kind of to make sure some of the major, if there were any major questions, issues, obstacles, that they would be resolved. And as I indicated, when I gave a report on that as well, saying what we had covered, that's in your handouts there, but that the main thing that was expounded on seemed to be the drainage issue, stormwater drainage, and sure enough, they've addressed it, not just with the adjoining property owner. Potentially, they've explored that, and that's going to be the route that was recommended by the county surveyor, Randy Sexton, but also just in general with the level of detail that they've provided, that our ordinance asks for, that they've provided all sorts of things like relating to stormwater drainage. And they did a whole thing, it's called a stormwater pollution prevention plan, referred to in the industry as SWPP, SWPPP, stormwater pollution prevention plan. And so that's in there amongst other things. And so again, we could do, if you'd like, general. Well, first of all, is the technical team of the church, would you like to say any more at this point? You'll certainly have an opportunity at any point to interject and vice versa.
I guess the only thing I was going to add and then offer, I'll add, is that this is zoned heavy industrial. But we went to the BZA back in, what was it, February, March, something like that, to grant a special use of religious place of worship for the property, which is actually currently used for agriculture. But so some of the reasoning behind wanting to get exception for the landscaping and buffering is some of those requirements are in place for a heavy industrial site, not necessarily for a religious place of worship, and maybe don't make sense for a religious place of worship to have those types of that extensive amount of buffering or certain landscaping. So those were some of the reasonings behind some of those. And then the thing I wanted to offer was if you guys would like, I could go through the plan set, kind of sheet by sheet quickly, if that's helpful to anybody, to kind of just, I guess, orient the group to every sheet, or what's going on, the basics of the design. We could do that rather quickly if you would like to do that.
I will add one thing. I think it's a good point that Ben has brought up, that they were given this, they're in an IH, industrial heavy zone, and the zoning ordinance was, written for all the particular uses that are allowed within a certain zoning, and the church is a special exception, so it wasn't really written with that anticipation. So it is a good point as to why it warrants a waiver from the standard landscaping / buffer requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Now, as far as the points, I don't see we have to go through them point by point. I think the Q&A would be the way to go. It looks like they've got all the bases covered pretty well.
I didn't hear you, Mark. I apologize. Which way would you suggest?
I'd say the Q&A. I don't really
Q&A,
see-
okay.
In light of how far in advance we got a lot of this information, I don't think it's necessary to go point by point, unless you guys want to.
So there seems to be some internal informal consensus. Is anybody feel strongly otherwise? So therefore,
because our
yeah.
technical team has gone through this point by point, correct?
We went through what would be considered the preliminary construction plan. It really hasn't changed much, other than for the better, where they've now addressed the one big concern on the part of the county drainage board, that they provide for the drainage. They didn't like to see a retention or a detention pond. That was at first under strong consideration, but the technical team of the church said, no, let's go with the county's recommendation. They found a way to, well, there would still be a detention pond, but it would have a way of draining. It wouldn't be sitting there as a retention pond.
So as it's being presented tonight, the town's team
Yeah, the
is
town.
favorable with this.
Well, let me say this. I'm, as town manager, I'm the plan administrator of the zoning ordinance, and then the technical team I assembled to provide the guidance to me as to what the pros and cons might be. And they did hit them, everybody weighed in, and the church's team was responsive to that. So there was an informal consensus, I'll label it as that the project looked good from the town's technical team standpoint. And then since reviewing those issues that were brought up and resolved and discussed, and then now seeing everything on a second review on my part, I can stand here and say as plan administrator that I endorse everything that they're presenting, and that it is virtually filled everything that was required. He's mentioned, the engineers mentioned two things forthcoming: a lighting plan, and then a little more detail on the gas and electrical part of the utility plan. And then the waiver request, I'm in favor of that would be allowed as well, in light of what we've talked about, that the ordinance was written for a different scenario, and their site is uniquely situated, and the use that's coming in is, by and large, a very, what would you say? It's a respectable use. It's a use that would, I think, get along well with other uses, because they're, churches are generally very concerned about their maintenance standards and adherence, and that's what the landscaping and buffering is all about.
May I ask then, as far as this landscaping waiver, in entirety, are we waiving this 7.7 and 7.8 in entirety? We're waiving the whole thing?
That's what they've asked, and if, let's just say, for sake of argument, down the road, things were to become less maintained and we didn't like the standards, there's other provisions that we can go after any property owner to enforce property type standards, maintenance standards, be it, the grass is too long, or, peeling wood on fences or on the building, things like that. So yes, I think they're requesting, and I concur that it would be appropriate, if the plan commission were to concur with that the entire section be waived for them.
And these landscaping standards and buffering are really just for the development process, is what's being waived. Correct?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Jason, to be honest with you. Do you mean, does it apply for just during the construction period?
Like, as for the approval of going forward when you're looking at a site development, like, that's what these really are hitting on?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. If I understand it correctly, yeah, it's part of what is normally the site development plan, excuse me, approval, which is what we're doing. So that, yeah, it's either a go situation or a no go. If something is there or not, or if you didn't like what was presented. So they're kind of opting and suggesting that they not get specific as to what they're going to do. And we would be, saying we'll trust their judgment. And again, should things change in the future, there would be other remedies, courses of action.
Could I say something?
Yes.
I just think too, I don't know if this makes any difference, but their churches always look nice. Their reputation stands. You know, it speaks for, I think, how they're gonna take care of their new property too. We get any worries there. I don't know if that makes any
Yeah,
difference.
it doesn't. I think that makes good sense. The scope of the project, obviously the investment that they're putting into it,
Yeah.
they are not going to have something that's not tasteful and, you know, attractive and.
I drive by there all the time and it's always looked nice.
And they're in a unique situation too, where
Always.
the property that they have, there's not any building around it. Nobody's gonna be butted up against them where they're gonna have to worry about a neighbor per se. Their closest neighbor would be to the north at the industrial park.
And, you know, to this point, it brings up an example or two that I'm thinking about, that these kind of sections of landscaping and buffering zone that our ordinance provides, it would be most applicable to a commercial use that's coming in next to a residential. So you'll see, you know, restaurants, they'll be required to put up a fence between the neighbor, and not just any fence, but a nice fence, something that'll, you know, prevent sometimes sound or sight, you know, where it's that kind of thing. If it were a junkyard coming in, well, same thing. You wouldn't want to waive this. You know, you would want to be very specific with depending on the type of commercial and or industrial use that would be coming in. So we're viewing this use as very innocuous, for lack of a better word, as to how it would affect the neighboring properties. And I dare say, you know, it wouldn't just be innocuous. It would slant on the meter of being a positive influence.
I think it's a great idea that they're going to continue to farm the undeveloped area until, you know, in the future, when we do decide to develop, if you do, it's still, and that acts as a little bit of a buffer to itself, or at least some foliage.
I do have another question. Will this pertain then, if this property were sold to somebody else? Does this still apply?
I don't think so, because they're coming in, and I'll stand corrected if Kurt needs to weigh in here, but this, the AAC, Albion Apostolic Church, is coming into this is a special exception use, and so it's, the site development plan is kind of under that banner as well, that it's geared for them alone, their particular use on this property.
So if it were to change hands?
If it were to change, correct me,
then
I'm
the
thinking.
special use exception would be reviewed again?
Yes.
Okay, I was looking here at this: changes after approval, no landscaping that has been approved by the Plan Commission may later be altered, eliminated, or sacrificed without first obtaining further Plan Commission approval. So it would again come before us in case of.
Yes, and by the way, what section are you reading, so everybody can be on the page?
This is section, well, it's page 120, and it's about halfway down 6.
May later be altered. Yes.
So if we've waived all the landscaping, can we later say, wait a minute, that tree is way too close to that outbuilding or something?
Well, we could enforce property maintenance standards, but there'd be limits onto that, you know, if something's been planted and allowed, it's probably going to be allowed to stay there, but maintained if it's somehow creating an adverse situation on a neighboring property or contributing to general dilapidation, state of dilapidation or something like that. There would be extreme reasons where we could come in and say, oh, you got to do something different, or here's the consequences.
Just my concern was, would it apply? This.
So I think it maybe is
no changes.
Attorney question as to if property changes use, they sell it to who knows what kind of a use. What happens to the fact that
It's a great question, and it's addressed in your ordinance, and it basically says that if you want successors in interest to be bound by certain commitments, they have to be put in writing, they have to be recorded, and they have to run with the land. So that would require a document of sorts that would make those commitments. So if you come up with commitments tonight that you want them to adhere to and their successors in interest to adhere to, it must be done before or as a part of the approval process, and it have to be documented in writing, recorded.
Okay, so if we waive this tonight,
It's waived.
it's waived just for them or?
It's waived forever.
Oh.
Unless somebody else comes and does some kind of development that requires them to come in here and do it again. Anything that you waive tonight is waived for this particular development. Now, if there's a new development that requires a new site plan review, then it will come before you, but otherwise, no. If you want commitments to run with the land that are binding on successors, those have to be put in place before you actually grant the approval. And that's part of your review process for the second part of what Steve's going to talk about tonight, which is on page, it's dealing with the findings you have to make for all those 16 different standards. And as you go through all of those, you can see at the very back part, I'm jumping ahead to give you some perspective. At the end, your possible action is to approve the modifications, or deny. So even though that's not what the statute says, your ordinance says that, so you have to follow your ordinance. Your ordinance provides for conditions. If you want those conditions to be placed on and be binding on successors, they must be recorded with the town and the Noble County recorder before any construction activity commences. So to answer your question, anything that you waive for this developer is waived for this particular development for everyone. So if you approve this and they sell before they construct, the new developer is going to be able to move forward with the waiver in place. If you're happy with that, that's fine. Just want you to know the answer.
Even though this is a special use?
Well, we can back up to that too. This should have been rezoned instead of what we did, which was created a variance through the BZA. So because of that, you're having to subject yourselves to zoning rules that really don't apply to a church. But we didn't do that. For whatever reason, you all went to the BZA and rezoned it, or didn't rezone it, you gave a special exception. So you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and I get that. It's not what I would have done. I would have rezoned it, and then you wouldn't have these issues that Sam is referring to, or whoever this gentleman is. Then, but we have this, so we can't cry over spilt milk. We got to deal with it. What we're dealing with is a BZA exception, as Steve referred to, which is forcing you to fit a square peg in a round hole. If you want to alter that, you got to do it through written commitments. Does that make sense? Otherwise, move forward, make your findings, and give them their approval, or waive it, or deny it, or set a second hearing or something. And I can help with that process if you want to know. But yeah, there's really two pieces to the puzzle. One is the checklist Steve's going through with you right now. And then the second is the piece where you got to make all these 16 different findings. And in that process, if you want to obligate them and their successors to certain commitments, that has to be done before construction commences and in writing.
So do you have a plan for landscaping then? Is there a specific, I mean, I know it's for the development of certain things and the buffers and all of that, but for the actual landscaping, like as far as trees, plants, shrubbery, all that kind of stuff, like is there any preliminary thoughts on what you plan to do?
Yeah, I mean, we have a general census of what we're doing. It's actually in the plans.
Yeah.
We have our greened areas, which is
Yeah, I saw
grass,
that, yeah.
concrete, the driveway, parking lot. All of that is drawn in. And I'll just, my desire is to make it the prettiest piece of property now. So I want green grass, a lot of green grass, it's striped lawn, sprinkler systems, no massive trees, decorative trees. That's kind of my take.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we have it officially drawn to that extent.
Yeah, so, and I'll say, I'll refer to page 3 of the letter that I had written, and it just says, the applicant plans to landscape, but seeks the freedom to landscape on site in accordance with the desires and needs of the church and not as dictated by a zoning ordinance. So I mean, the zoning ordinance goes into, exactly what, number of trees you have to have and where they have to be located and exactly, where shrubs have to be and how high and how tall. And it's just very, very detailed and expensive. And if we're this tucked away piece of property that is not really on in very much right of way at all, we're kind of back behind buildings, we're kind of away from the road. We thought it was justifiable to ask for an exemption.
And just so that you know, I don't disagree with it. Matter of fact, I completely agree with it. It's the dilemma when you seek a variance versus a rezone. When you seek a variance, you're trying, like I said, to fit a square peg in a round hole, and you come up with these dilemmas. So the developer is supposed to know that when they apply for their variance or their rezone. That is their job. Whether you want to accommodate their failure to understand that is up to you.
You have a recommendation.
You probably don't want my recommendation, but I will do whatever I can to help you get to where you want to be. In the end, what you're looking for, if you want to approve this project, you're supposed to go through it as Steve is taking. He's taking you down that path. He's showing you all the items in the checklist that have been provided and the ones that are forthcoming and the ones that are yet to be developed, which of course caused me concern. When you approve something that's yet to be developed, we don't know what the easement looks like. We don't even know if the landowner will agree. They say that he will, but nothing's in writing. Those things, as a lawyer, bother me. But why? Why do they bother me? Because I'm looking out for ultimately defending a challenge. If you're not worried about a challenge, and in the end, you're not thinking that anybody's going to come in and file a lawsuit to undo what you're doing, then you don't have to worry about the things I worry about, right? That's my job. But so ultimately you have to decide whether the risk of moving forward is worth going through what needs to be done to make sure all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. If you think there's no risk and you're not concerned about it and you want to make sure that you at least approve the process, I can walk you through what you're supposed to do after you review these 16 development standards. That's the dilemma. If you ask me as a lawyer in a setting where I'm publicly being broadcast, I'm going to tell you what it has to be done to be able to comply so that you're challenged, if you're ever challenged by a court of law or in a court of law, we can defend it and win. That's what I want to do, is win. So the point is that there are things like, for instance, the thing that concerns me is this stormwater issue. It's not resolved. They think it's resolved. They talk about it. It sounds great, but it isn't. So for me, it's premature to approve until you get that resolved. But if you don't want to worry about that, you want to move forward, that's up to you. We can make sure that happens. The lighting plan is forthcoming. The utility plan is going to change. These are variables that you're either trusting that they will do to your satisfaction, or you make them do them before you grant the approval. It's up to you, though, not me. I will help you whether you want to grant the approval without these things being resolved now, which you can do, or whether or not you want to make sure these things are addressed before you grant the approval. It really comes down to what do you want to do? And when you tell me what you want, I will help you get there. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, what would I do? So I would hold their feet to the fire and make them do it right, but that's me. And not everybody likes that. It's not a real touchy-feely, warm, fuzzy way of handling things. So, yeah.
I am not concerned about the landscape or the lighting, really. The drainage concerns me. That's, we're counting on somebody else. And they're going to do everything they can to make things right. But we're counting on somebody else not changing their mind about something. I think we'll have that in writing.
I agree, because is the drainage plan just to be natural runoff or into structures to a drain or a pipe or something?
Yeah, so there'll be structures in the parking lot areas that will take that to a detention basin that will have an outlet to, what's the name of the ditch? I can't remember.
I don't know the name of the ditch, but running through the farmer's property. South corner of his property.
That's what I was thinking, Vicki.
Croft. Yeah, Croft. The same one with the
Yeah,
police on.
Is there an opportunity, I should ask that, Is there a possibility that any of the current manufacturers out there would want to expand on their property, and how could that affect the drainage?
We're uphill from the manufacturing facilities, so, and, you know, by ordinance, they would be having to detain what, on site, what they are generating as well, so, I wouldn't anticipate any issue with that personally.
It doesn't look like, just from my perception, and I could be wrong, that they have much room to expand on at least the two businesses that are on Apostolic Way. Or their address is in Apostolic Way. They're on Progress Drive, but they have some frontage on, like on a corner property of the two streets. And it doesn't look like they have any real.
So there's only minimal area out there
Minimal,
for
yeah.
expansion of current businesses.
I would think so. Certainly, they could probably put a building addition on, but it wouldn't seem to
Affect them really?
I'm sorry?
It would probably wouldn't affect their drainage because they would be hooked into the Albion storm drain system or the sewage system or whatever they needed to be.
Perhaps, or as the engineer stated, they would have to mitigate whatever impact they would then, last one on the block mitigates, whatever construction you're doing, you've got to mitigate that based on the current drainage picture.
If I could say something here, I did talk to Rick Rawls yesterday, and he said he's willing to sign anything, and I would suggest if we are approving anything on this, that we do it with a contingency, that Rick is going to sign an approval.
Exactly what I was thinking.
And, I mean, you can put that in the minutes, that's just a suggestion that Rick this is contingent upon him signing this.
If for any reason he wouldn't do that, is there a plan B?
So the plan B, per conversation with Randy Sexton, the county surveyor, would be to allow a infiltration basin, which is what our original plan was, which just means we do these in Elkhart County all the time, but they are, the stormwater goes there and it infiltrates into the ground.
Because there again, I can't see that you're going to invest in a project like this and not have a plan B for your own protection. You're not going to want a parking lot that's underwater all the time.
No.
So, I mean, we need to cover ourselves, but you are also wanting to do that from your end. This is a huge investment for your church. And
Yep. I'll say one other thing. I mean, and I would agree to. I think it's a great idea to put a contingency in place. If you say you're agreeing to this with the contingent upon whatever statement. But two things. One, the whole BZA issue that Kurt raised. We had talked about, do we need to get a rezoning done, or do we need to do a BZA thing? And we were talking with Steve all those months ago. We kind of, as a group, decided that the right thing to do was a BZA variance request. And so we went forward with that. Hindsight's 20/20, I guess. And, that decision may not have been the right one, I guess, based on Kurt. I guess maybe Kurt should have been involved in that discussion.
Water over the dam.
Yeah. And then secondly, I guess, our firm, we do this stuff all the time. Not as much. We haven't done anything in Albion. This is the first one in actual Albion. We do quite a bit in Noble County, Elkhart County, St. Joe County, everywhere. I mean, all over the place. 99% of the time, our plans are pretty much complete when they would come to something like this. This time, though, we're short the lighting plan. We're short, a little bit of more information on the drainage plan and those kinds of things. Normally, we wouldn't have gone to this, but you guys are not meeting next month. And we decided we really didn't want to wait 2 more months to get an approval. And so we kind of expedited our plans a little bit ahead of schedule. And so they're maybe not as 100% complete as what we would like them to have been coming into this meeting, but just for everyone's background knowledge on those things.
I'm sorry, I have on the schedule that we are meeting August 6th.
Yeah.
This one?
August 6th.
Yeah, that would be right. It's usually the June meeting that gets.
It might have been, I remember your schedule. It was, yeah, we blame Kurt, no. It was the prior meeting, wasn't it, or was it?
June.
The June meeting that you weren't.
So you are meeting actually?
In August.
Potentially, if there's an agenda item.
I personally don't see a reason why we can't go through the checklist, and if everything else seems to be okay, just put in the contingency for the drainage.
I'm going to speak to the contingency issue, just so that you know. Obviously, you can do it. Interestingly enough, in my email that I sent to all of you, hopefully you got it, the contingency requirement that the statute allows the town to implement, whether it be for simple contingencies like we want somebody to do this or that. It's interesting. The statute allows the town zoning ordinance to incorporate those. The town ordinance that was done, 5 years ago or so, specifically excluded contingencies as an option for, and I don't know if it was done by mistake or intentionally, but it doesn't have it in there. So the statute allows it, but it's silent on it in your zoning ordinance, which is an interesting issue. I tell you that only so that you know that the statute says that you can grant contingency. Yeah, I know, that's how I felt, same way you are when I read it. So I'm not saying you can't do it. What I'm telling you is the ordinance says what you can. It says you can basically have formal commitments, you can approve, you can deny the permit, or you can have a secondary review at a hearing. Those are the things that
with modification was one of the options, right?
Well, yeah, that's one where it requires an approval with modifications, but that's the part that's troublesome to me, because it speaks in terms of having it be a formal document that's got to be recorded and all that. So, there is an option in the statute to just have a contingency where it's in the minutes, as you referred to, and it's just part of the approval. Your ordinance doesn't have that. There's two things that your ordinance doesn't have that the statute allows. I don't know why it's not in there. Doesn't matter, it's not in there. So the question is, do you grant the contingency knowing that it's not in there, knowing that the statute allows it, but your ordinance doesn't? That's, or do you have a secondary review at a hearing, and hopefully by then they get it done? Obviously, the safest approach, because your ordinance doesn't allow it, is to have the secondary review at a hearing, and they have it all done by then, and it's supplied to everybody, and everybody's satisfied, and you approve it then. But that kicks the can down the road a month. So you guys just need to think that through and understand the risk. If you have questions, let me know.
I think we'd be wise to make sure all our ducks are in a row before I know that they're on a tight schedule wanting to get things done, and that they're interested in making a big commitment to our community, which is fantastic when you look at Albion anymore. But I don't want to see us 10 years down the road, run into some kind of a problem that we could have handled within the next 30 or 60 days or whatever time frame that our attorney thinks it would take to do that. Because, nobody knows what might pop up, and we need to have ourselves covered.
We do have the option of setting special meetings. I, as council president, don't like us only setting our meeting dates by the people who petition to us, because I think it's only fair to ask the people on these boards to set aside a certain Wednesday of every month. But if we, as a board, want to set a special meeting, we can do that. So that would not necessarily make it wait a whole month.
When I agreed to become a part of this group, I did it understanding that there is a possibility there could be things outside of a monthly or a bi-monthly meeting. And if I hadn't looked at it that way, I probably wouldn't have said, no, I'm too busy. I can't, if it's not set in stone, I can't participate. But, you know, that's just the way I looked at it when I agreed to be part of this group.
Well, sometimes the people from the outside meet deadlines and stuff
I
for our
realize that.
agendas, and so that's a different situation. But when it's us that feel the need to set a special meeting,
Well,
that is a little bit.
To me, it would
different, so
benefit
that's
both
an
of us
option.
because it would make these fellows' job move along more quickly and get things started for them. Because believe it or not, the construction season's starting to close already. You know, we're here in July and, you know, 120 days from now, it could be the rainy season. So I don't have a problem personally, you know, if we have to set up an extra get together or discussion session to help them move along with their plans. Our attorney can, you know, advise us on that if that's a reasonable outlook.
It is, and it's contemplated that you would have a secondary review at a hearing, which I've talked to Steve about or we've had an exchange of emails about what that takes. It would take a notice, 10 days, paper, et cetera. And so that would dictate when you would have it, and we'd have to coordinate schedules with them, of course. But you can have a subsequent review, a secondary look at this, bite at the apple if you want. So if you set it out far enough for them to be able to have enough time to get accomplished whatever it is you want to see, whether it's, you know, written commitments on the easement, whether it's lighting plans, whether it's updated utility plans, et cetera, whatever you want, you would give them direction tonight and then coordinate a second hearing where we'd actually have a notice posted that
And
published.
there's the 10-day notice.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that business days or calendar days?
It's a great question. It doesn't count weekends or holidays. That's a great question.
So we're coming up with 3 days that it would
Right
push it
now.
on out till third week in July.
Kurt, why would it take a special, you know, notice and for the type of public hearing, whereas this meeting presumably didn't, and we could act, you know, this board could act now.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it just have another normal meeting and act in
Sure.
the same way?
They can act now, like I've said. It's whether or not these issues are important to them or not. So they can approve it tonight without conditions. They can approve it with conditions. There's nothing in your ordinance that allows for it. It's all a question of whether you are concerned about ever being challenged. If nobody's concerned, once again, if nobody's concerned about being challenged, approve it subject to whatever you want to say. I'm just telling you, there's nothing that allows me to defend that position if that's the position you take. And if somebody challenges us on that action, it's probably not valid.
But I mean, the next meeting, why does that have to be a different type of meeting, a public
Right.
hearing with notice?
Right. I guess the statute just says when you have a subsequent review, it has to be at a hearing. It uses the word hearing.
I follow that.
I don't know why
So it's just, you know,
they use that word, but it doesn't talk. It says here tonight, it says, of course, you know, my position was you could have approved this and we didn't have to have a meeting or a hearing. But when you go down this path, then now they're in charge of everything. And if they want to look at it again, it requires a hearing notice, 10-day notice.
okay,
I don't know why, but yeah.
I personally, I may be wrong, maybe I haven't thought it through, but I would think that we could let them get this moving, not dependent on landscaping, but with the contingency on the drainage. Does that make sense to anybody else?
That's still what I'm thinking.
Excuse me?
That's still what I'm thinking.
I guess what hangs me up is we don't have any lighting plan or updated utility plan. So would that be part of the contingency that's what bothers me is stuff is forthcoming and we would be giving them trust, which, I mean, it seems like we can, but that's the thing I'm hung up on. And obviously showing drainage, but that's not all here. I like Vicky's idea of if we can do a special meeting of some sort, give them a little bit more time, but not wait too long.
Well, I know this is what you've presented tonight has taken a lot of time, and I think you had hoped to have been here a couple of months ago, and it didn't happen. So what kind of time frame are you comfortable with? Are you thinking that if we wait until the next meeting, which is the first week in August, it's holding you up?
It's already a fact.
I think, well, let me say this first. If we didn't intend to do a lighting plan or something, we would have asked for a waiver from that as well. I think it's definitely our intention to do that. I think there's just, I think there's just frustration from the owner standpoint, just because this has been a process that's been going on from their standpoint for 4 years, trying to get the building, the land purchased, and trying to get a builder, trying to get somebody to work on it for them, somebody trying to get a survey crew to work on it, and just a long thing that just won't ever die. Not that that's necessarily your guys' problem or anything, but from their perspective.
I'll say this, Ben. We're not trying to do anything we're not supposed to do. And whatever this board decides to do, we will abide by 100%. We're not trying to push any agendas. We just want to work together, and if it's right to wait, we'll wait.
I think Brad's expressed to me, as long as some of the members, that their desire is to not put a bad taste in anybody's mouth in this community, and to,
It's not our intention.
and to be only positive. So,
But right's right and wrong's wrong. And we want to be.
We're back to what our comfort level is.
Yeah. That's really what it is. Are you comfortable moving forward with their representations, which I am not challenging at all, knowing though that if you do that, there's some risks. How much? That's for you to evaluate. Or do you want to?
Now, as far as the water drainage stuff, there's 2 plans. If the first one falls through and they don't get the right of way, they don't get that. We already have another plan. They have another plan. That, are we comfortable with that?
I just
Look
can't
at it.
see them allowing.
Look
their
at it that
parking
way,
lot.
right?
No.
Like they already have another plan to have a basin. If the tying into the tile does not work.
I just don't want to see us get in a situation like our attorney said, that if somewhere down the road, something comes up and if someone challenges it, not this group, but another group about anything, first thing they're going to say, well, we look back and then this time you did this for this group. Now, why are you not doing that for this group? And he doesn't have a leg to stand on to challenge, if we're challenged. And I just think that, that's not a wise move. Not only for us, but for them also, so that, because we all know that if something negative would come up, then there's countless fingers pointed everywhere, and each way they can be pointed, and that's not fair to anybody that's in this group or with that church group or anything to have anything that would reflect negative on anybody.
And then again, Lori, you were in on this preliminary meeting. Stephen, you were. Terry was. Who else was?
Scott.
Scott.
Fire Chief Bob Emmer.
And the fire. And you all figured that it would be okay for us to go ahead with what we have now?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, obviously some things were brought up that only an attorney would obviously advise us on.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that we wouldn't think about. I think as frustrating as it is for everybody, I think we're all in agreement that we might want to at least maybe wait for a special meeting or wait till the August meeting. That way all our Ts are crossed and our Is are dotted. I don't know if everybody's in agreement with that. I see both sides of it. Do I feel that we're the town itself will get screwed with this? No, I don't. But Wayne also brings up a good point. What if we do it for this, we don't do it for the next one? And so there's a lot of good points here. I think
The
it's
council
obviously,
has this every meeting. We have a topic every meeting that we have the same
I
conversation.
mean, we're definitely moving in the right direction. Everything's going the way it should. I think it just sounds like we've got a couple little things to button up and we're flowing. I mean, believe me, I understand the frustration from the church's part. There's obviously frustration on our part too, because I think we all assumed we were just gonna boom, let's go through this and get them on the way. But I think we better do the right thing. That's my opinion. That's obviously there's 8 of us here, but
Question. If we have to come back to another plan commission meeting, does that mean we also have to have another technical review meeting with the staff again as well?
I don't think, no. Yeah, Kurt says.
I don't believe so. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't believe, at this point, it's really up to them to check off those 16 different findings. And once they're ready to do that, whenever they're comfortable with that, they can get this done. So it comes down to their comfort level of going through those 16 findings. And they can do them quickly when they're ready. So whatever that is. So no, they don't need to go through technical review. I think from what I hear, if they continue this and they don't do it tonight, they're probably going to want answers and see documents relative to these various issues. And we probably better get some direction as to what that looks like. I don't know.
I guess the follow-up question then is, if it's just those checklist items, I think if you were to go through the plans as they are right now, with the exception of the lighting, which is forthcoming, and the gas and electric connections, which obviously are a necessity, and we're never not going to have those. We're definitely going to have gas and electric. I think you would find that we meet all of those right now. The drainage plan as is meets the requirements. The utility plan as is meets the requirements. Are the details going to change?
I don't want to mislead you. The 16 I'm talking about are basically it's E3. And so we haven't even talked about those yet.
No, I know.
Right. So if they want to go through when they're ready, of course, they can go through A through whatever it is. What is it? E.
Yeah.
And of course, there's lots of subjective language in there, right?
Sure.
Adequate this, adequate that. And so it's for them to make that determination, whether they've got adequate this and adequate that. And if they come to that conclusion, yes, they can. But they also have the privilege, I guess, of saying they want more information before they're ready to do that. I don't disagree with you, though. They probably could find all of those in compliance if they wanted to.
That was my point. That I think it's feasible that you would find all of them in compliance. But there may be some details of how they're in compliance that may shift around a little bit, like the drainage. But that doesn't mean it's not already in compliance, or would remain.
I do agree with.
I appreciate the argument, yeah.
I do agree with that. If Plan A, as far as going across Rawls' property doesn't work out, Plan B it's in effect. So I like that there's 2 plans in case one of them doesn't work. So that gives me a little bit better feeling.
So a lot of times we've been in a position where you can't let your personal,
Mhm.
and we need like our facts of findings and all those kind of things that we do. It's not there's not really gray area. It's either yes, they need it or no, they don't. So you know where I'm going with
Yeah,
that?
it's discretionary, and that's the purpose of this meeting, is if you want more information before you start checking off these 16 boxes, then that's up to you as a board. That really is what it comes down to. They're rightfully so arguing they already meet the standards. And so they're saying, check off those boxes and let us go.
So when we check off these 16 boxes, then there's no
Starting
further
on page 2204, in case you're wondering
Yeah.
where I'm at. Yeah.
then there's no further discussion about any plans? at this
Once you
point?
check off those boxes and you make a finding for each one of them that they're in compliance, it's over with. Now they have their approval. That's what they're looking for.
Sure, yeah.
I'm just pointing out that if you want, you have the opportunity to get these other questions answered if you want. That is, you're right, up to you.
I'll weigh in a little more on this then. Because you brought up earlier, Kurt, and it's a good point, and the council considers it on many issues all the time, risk versus reward. And I know we've talked about, comparing apples to apples in the future. Is someone going to say, well, you've established a bad precedent because you allowed this project to do, they didn't have to do A, B, and C. Well, we do. But I would kind of argue a bit saying every project is different on its face anyways, across the board. Everything that comes across our jurisdiction, it's different. It's never apples to apples. And so, when things are given as exceptions, that's exactly what they are, exceptions, particular and peculiar to the case at hand. And they doesn't have to apply to the next case that comes in the door. And I don't know, I err on the side of, less red tape, the better. I mean, people's experience with government is associated with red tape, delay, this and that. When we have opportunity to cut through that, I would err on that side. But again,
Well, we had the opportunity. You could have approved it and not had this hearing.
that's true. And I didn't know I had that authority. Because the one word "and," it's a plan administrator and plan commission. Pardon?
It says and or.
I didn't see the "and" or.
The statute says or too, but whatever.
Oh, okay, that's fine. But yeah, and frankly.
If somebody would ask me before, I would have happily answered that question.
Okay. But anyway, and had I've known that before, I don't know, I might have said, well, projects of this caliber need to be a group decision. But here we are as a group. I would still, I still endorse that, as the engineer stated, they've, virtually met or in the process of meeting the particulars that doesn't really matter to the nth degree that the ordinance suggests it should. I don't think any project does. There's gray areas in every project and loopholes and exceptions. And so I think I would suggest there's a comfort level in this project based on the location, based on the caliber of the applicant, that we can, some things we can accept that they're going to be done to a higher standard than the ordinance requires anyway, even though they're not at hand right now visibly, that it will be there.
The more I think about it, the more I agree with you. I don't see any purpose of delaying this anymore.
And the exceptions started with the BZA. If you want to really go back and point a finger at, well, they got an exception. Yeah, they did through the BZA to even be in this position right now.
I'm sure we must.
Yeah.
I guess the thing I'm hung up on is the section is called required materials for site development plan applications, and the lighting plan and the utility plan is under that. And if we don't want them to be required, then that's one thing, but as of now, as I'm reading it anyway, on page 200, it starts required materials, and those are under there. Am I reading that wrong? So more so than even, the drainage plan I'm actually pretty comfortable with because we do have those options, but it's the other ones, if we're having to do those check marks.
And again, the motion could be made, if there's an inclination to want to push this through, you could make it subject to. And what would that be realized at the point when they apply for the building permit, or as far as if an exception, if they say, when would those need to roll in, subject to?
Well, like I said, your ordinance doesn't allow a subject to unless the written commitment's running with the land. That's that horrible language about modifications, approval with modifications, kind of what you're referring to. It says they have to be in writing. That's why I was saying, they're not gonna wanna do all that. And the statute allows you to put in the minutes conditions, but our ordinance, for some reason, doesn't adopt those two. So you either have to take the position, we're gonna do it anyway, despite the fact that it's missing it, knowing that it's a little bit of a legal risk, or you have a subsequent hearing and get all these things resolved beforehand and know that they're done, because there isn't a process in your ordinance to do it.
We put in the minutes that we will not do take no legal action.
I mean,
Or that we would follow whatever
Yeah, right.
recommendations.
Just write it in there that we won't come back and sue to get our.
You can put anything in there you want. All I'm saying is it's not binding on you. And it's not part of the ordinance, so there's no process to do that. So if that makes everybody feel comfortable to go through the 16 checklists, absolutely. The way the statute reads is all these things have to be done before construction can begin.
Construction, I see.
Yeah, so I think it does come down to, as Vicki pointed out, a comfort level. If you're comfortable with the representations that they've made today, and you want to go through these 16 different items that start on 204 and make those findings and give them their permission, great. If you want to do that subject to these, as Steve referred to, approval with modifications, and we put something in writing, if they have to sign, it's binding on the successors, yada, yada, and recorded, you can do that. Or if you want to kick the can down the road for a couple weeks, you can do that too. Of course, you can approve it without any question at all or deny it. Those are other options. And we all inherited a bad ordinance and a bad situation from that standpoint. So none of us, I don't think any of us here drafted it, so we're dealing with an unfortunate situation. I don't know why it cut out those very two specific waivers, 3 and 4 in the statute. There's not in there.
I might also suggest, Corey, for your consideration on this matter, because there's been an ample amount of time for some opinions to be expressed, and we've heard a variety. Maybe you could take a straw poll right now, which would just be not binding, and to say, how would how would the commission feel about approving it, or and then see what everybody feels, or with modifications, see how they feel, or come back in 2-3 weeks, see how they feel. Then there'd be kind of you get a sense of where the majority is, and if it doesn't have to be unanimous, and that's not a bad thing, in my opinion, because everybody it's showing that we're all thinking. We're expressing different opinions, and that's healthy. And even some things you might want a unanimous consent vote, but in other times it's absolutely not necessary. And
that is why I asked at the beginning, how many members are on this board legally? Because it comes down to, if it's 9, then you got to have, well, even if it's 8, you got to have 5 in favor, right, to pass anything. You can't have. So
you're not a deciding vote, are you? You're not a voting.
I don't believe I have voting.
I don't believe so either. You have administrative powers, but like me, you're just consultants, if you will.
Which is strange, because I was informed I could have passed all of this unanimously.
You can, yeah. You could have, now you can't.
What we're gonna check on.
So are you taking a poll?
Yep, I guess I'll take the poll. I'll start first. I'm in favor of moving forward. I've kind of gone back and forth on a few things, but at this point, I'm in favor of moving forward.
I am going to say it doesn't matter what meeting I go to. I feel like I'm on the hot seat every time because it comes down to risk versus comfort level. And this congregation is a wonderful asset to the town of Albion. And I know they've been outgrown in their building for a long time. They've worked very hard to get to the point they're at. If we can't trust them, I don't know who we can trust. And I'm just to the point where I want to see them, you know. And I think I have the faith of our 5 department heads that are going to be going out and checking as they're doing all these things, and they're going to keep them. I know you know, it's not some of these big things, but the little things, they're going to keep on top of them and make sure they're doing them like their site plans say and all that. And I'm ready to go ahead and continue on with the 19 points or whatever.
Well, she said, I couldn't have put it better myself. It's pretty much exactly what I was thinking. I don't think there's any reason to speak up really, I mean, except for like an act of God, which may be bad.
They're in control of that.
Yeah, you guys got that under control, so I'm not worried.
I'm not comfortable with moving on. I don't want to, the world has changed so much that I'm afraid that if we don't have everything properly lined up, that it could come back to haunt us. And I agree that I don't think that these people would do one thing that wasn't proper. But I'm trying to look at the big picture on down the road, other people, other groups, other projects. I don't want to get us in a situation where we regret what we did when we had an opportunity to do something. So.
I want to ask you a question, Ken. Once they're done, doesn't everything have to be inspected before
Yes.
they're opened?
Yeah,
And
that's correct. Yeah, the next step would be they would apply for a building permit through my office,
Mhm.
and then it goes to the county saying they've applied for a permit. I issue the permit, but the county inspects. So all the construction is inspected by the county now,
Okay.
of the building and so forth. I'm not so sure, not so much sure about the land development phase of it, the grading and things like that. It's likely our people would be involved in at least some of the utility
So they still have
infrastructure.
loopholes to go through and inspections and.
Yeah, they got to meet a lot of standards that haven't even been presented here, or nor are addressed in the zoning ordinance. There's building codes and so forth.
I'm in favor of going forward.
I think with the history that they've got with Albion and the good standing of the community, I'm comfortable with it.
I want to start my tenure here, looking at the ordinances and what they say, so I wouldn't be comfortable moving forward as they haven't supplied the required documents. I think I'm so excited to see the church come to the community and all of that. I support the project. Looking at the verbiage in our ordinances, I just think we should wait.
I would like to see us move forward on that, going through these different points. And with, I don't know, you call them contingencies or whatever, that these things will be, can we do that?
Well, you can, that's the ultimate question.
Right.
And what I hear
That the
is
lighting will be
majority does not
addressed.
appear to want to tie these issues to a formal commitment, if you will. If you want to go through the findings and determine they're in compliance, they'll be able to do it without these. You're just doing it based on their representation. So in the end, after you get through going through all these findings, if the determination is that you want to approve it subject to these, what's the language of your statute? Approval with modifications, then if you want to do it according to the ordinance, they have to be in writing, they've got to be recorded, they've got to have legal descriptions, drawings, etc., and it becomes binding on successors and interest and runs with the land. That's the language of your ordinance. So you don't have language in your ordinance that makes a contingency available other than this way. So I'm not trying to make it difficult. If you want to do a contingency that doesn't follow this requirement, absolutely, you can make that motion. I'm just telling you, I don't have a framework to provide you any kind of ultimate support if it doesn't go well. Let's just say you make it contingent and they don't get a drainage plan that you're satisfied with. They still have the approval to move forward. There might be other avenues to approach them to get it addressed, but if they don't do something, you don't have the ability to, or if they sell the land, you don't have the ability to go after a subsequent purchaser unless you make them in writing, binding on the land, subject to the language in there. So, long-winded answer to your question.
I think we've already learned a good lesson about just doing it through the BZA instead of a rezoning. In the future, maybe we won't do a zoning exception.
BZAs have there's great opportunities and times when that's appropriate.
Maybe this wasn't one of those
Well,
times.
with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, I suppose, it would have been.
Maybe we will have learned that lesson. I guess I'd still like to see it go forward if we can and not tie it up. On account of conflicting or irregular verbiage in two different.
I want to insert one thing, and I apologize if it's a little out of the order. The actual zoning ordinance that they were given a special exception under industrial heavy, did actually anticipate a place of religious worship, because that was identified as eligible for a special use exception. So it's not like
No,
we
it
were
wasn't
far
wrong.
afield.
It
Yeah,
wasn't
we
wrong.
weren't too far afield.
Okay.
And there's another special exception going to be coming before the Board of Zoning Appeal not the next meeting, but the meeting after that. It has to do with a residential area where somebody wants to put a mobile home, and you rezone it, or they're going the route of no, special exception, because 2 lots over, it's all mobile homes. But either it's got the either option though again. But anyway, every case is different. Again, I'm sorry that the timing wasn't the greatest for that. But so you took the straw poll, and we really appreciate Kurt's advice. He's been on point in pointing out these these different things that are for our good.
So what, at some point you should do, if you're going to actually formally go through all of the, I'm sorry.
No, it's just me.
If you're going to go through the points starting on page 204, you can decide how you want to do them. You can do them, all at once, or you can go through each one of them individually. The way your ordinance and the statute reads, you're supposed to make a finding on each of them. So you can do them collectively, as long as you make a finding that they either are or are not in compliance, right? And then once you've made all those 16 determinations, whether you do them individually or as a group, which is, like I said, you can do it either way you want. That's more a process issue. But once you're done, then you can make it. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't say whether if they fail one of them, do they fail the whole thing, or do they have to meet them all? So once again, we're left with having to interpret, and I would let you decide that. But you should at least make determinations on all of those 16. At least that's what your ordinance says. And like I said, a lot of them have language like adequate, so that's an opinion, right, of yours. And I think your recommendations from your zoning
First
administrator.
word for almost every one of them.
Vicki, I missed what you said.
I think you're.
I said the word adequate is almost the
okay.
first word.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a subtle reason.
So what is the pleasure, the direction of the commission then? Do you Corey, would you feel that the group, by the way, the straw poll indicated that, yeah, what, at least, 1 to 5 of you, I didn't count Sherry, she's kind of maybe in the wait category. 5 definitely want to move forward, 3 maybe wait, but move forward was the sense of at least go through the criteria.
I had 62.
6, okay, you added Sherry, that's fine.
Either way,
I
yeah.
think we should be looking at these.
should be going-
I think the pastor would like to get to his meeting.
You know what,
Yeah.
I made a few texts there, and I'm good, we're good.
Somebody's got your back.
They covered. This is
We're
very.
an hour and a half in and I'm a slow reader, so if we're gonna go through these,
You better get going because I'm hungry.
does anybody want to volunteer to read them or you want me to read them?
I'll volunteer if you'd like.
I would love that, Steve.
Okay, so the first, we're on, for everybody on the same page, we're on page 204. We're under standards for review, which is item 3 of that section. And there are points A through the letter P, as in Peter, which I think are 16. So the first one, A, the application shall comply with the provisions of this ordinance and other ordinances of the town. And it says prior to that, the plan commission shall consider the following criteria listed below, as well as the criteria in the site development plan application checklist, which I ascertained to be the list of the required materials, which we've kind of already gone through. So you feel the application complies with this ordinance and other ordinances of the town. Now, are we going to go through all the town's 150 ordinances, or however many there are? I don't even know. But, you know what
I'm
I'm
free
saying.
tonight.
So
I got
are they
nothing
in violation? Maybe we could ask the counterpart. Is this in violation of any ordinances that we know of? Doesn't seem to be. So therefore, the converse should be true. They comply with other provisions as far as we know. So the answer to that would be yes. Any disagreement with that?
Just, so it says the application, not to keep harping on this, shall comply with this ordinance. But if the requested materials weren't given as part of the application, wouldn't that be against the ordinance?
Yeah, I think technically you've got a strong point there for an answer no. Their intent is to comply, though.
Yes, I will agree with that. But intent versus in compliance.
Reality, yeah. What's in hand.
Right. I think it's a timing issue more than anything at this point.
Okay, so there's some no and some yes on that. Let's go to B. The plan shall be in reasonable conformity with the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Okay. C, reasonable provision shall be made to ensure that development will be served by essential public facilities and services such as highways, streets, parking spaces, police and fire protection, drainage structures, refuse disposal, water and sewers, or septic schools. We determined on a staff technical level that yes, everything would be served by the application as.
That's meaning, sure most everybody knows that means like the street will be plowed up to their entrance. The water main that broke outside of their property line is obviously town's responsibility. Once we get in their property, that's a whole different ballgame, and I'm sure you guys understand that as well.
Okay, so we answered that, and I'll say by informal consent, I hear a yes, and if someone objects, speak up. D, letter D, any building or structure shall be reasonably accessible to fire, police, emergency, and service vehicles. When deemed necessary for access, emergency vehicle easements shall be provided. The access for fire, police, and emergency vehicles shall be unobstructed at all times. They indicated at the meeting that we had on staff level that in fact would be correct. Yes, sure.
Question on sheet 1 of the construction plans. There are future parking, future building there. Does that have the
Fire lane.
easement for the fire lane right here?
And the thing to recall, or I'll point out, the future, they've provided that as a bonus, if you will. We're not judging the application on any of the future proposals that are conceptual at this point. But they wanted to give a bit of a picture of their vision.
would they need to come back with a future
Yes,
proposal?
Yeah.
to
Yes.
address it? Okay, and we would address any easements for fire at that time.
that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've answered letter D, yes. E, adequate provision shall be made to ensure the compatibility of the proposed development, including its mass, scale, site layout, site design, with the character of the surrounding property and neighborhood. And then it says, including 3 points, relationship of buildings to sites. I'm not going to read all those A, B, and C's. The building design refers to like architectural design standards, and then 3 signs. Signs they would be getting a separate permit for down the road. Building design, I mean, we're not really addressing that as part of this at this stage. I don't know when that would, if in fact it would even be addressed per se, but I know with the issuance of a building permit, we don't really look at design. They just have to meet code, and that's determined by the county. They chose the relationship of their building to their particular site based in large measure on drainage concerns, I think, and as well as, probably to minimize cost of the development in terms of infrastructure required. But also, I think I'm guessing they wanted some visibility. And so they've considered that, and this they chose was their most preferred location. We didn't feel that on a staff technical level, that we had any objection with that.
But E is a yes?
I haven't heard any no's. I would say that's a unanimous yes. Letter E, we go on to letter F as in Frank. Open space provided is configured to make that open space usable, functional, and appropriate to the development proposed. Any open land around their site, they've indicated for the first time, that was very refreshing to hear, according to Corey, that they're going to allow that to be farmed, and then future development would be according to what their plans are. But right now, we thought it was an appropriate mix of building the parking lot to green space. So I'm going to suggest a yes. Any questions? Okay, all good. Next letter G for good. Streets and sidewalks shall, insofar as reasonably practical, provide access and good traffic circulation to and from adjacent lands, existing streets, and sidewalks. I don't think there are any existing sidewalks on Apostolic Way. And therefore, they are providing access, connecting to that street with a road of similar width, size, and quality and material. I mean, I'm sure it'd be a better standard, frankly, than what we have out there now. Okay, so G is implied yes. Letter H, provision shall be made to ensure that adequate access roads or entrance or exit drives will be provided, will be designed and improved so as to prevent traffic hazards or problems and minimize traffic congestion in public streets. I think our public safety, we're okay with the plan as presented. They've got one entrance. I believe they're going to have a separate construction entrance off of our street here, Park.
Right here, down by the water tower.
Okay.
It's the original farm entrance of that property.
Oh, okay. So you're pointing that way, and I'm pointing this way.
Yeah.
You're right.
So-
I am geographically challenged. Okay, so that's a yes, I'll presume. Okay. We were on to letter I, and almost through our list. Adequate provision shall be made to ensure that the vehicular circulation elements of the proposed development will not create hazards to the safety of the vehicle or pedestrian traffic on or off the site, disjointed vehicular or pedestrian circulation paths on or off the site, or undue interference and inconvenience to vehicular and pedestrian travel.
And right now, there's no allowance for pedestrian travel, is there? No sidewalks?
Yeah.
And I would say that there's probably going to be very few walkers to the church, given that it's an industrial development, not a residential development. And, services tend to be on evenings and weekends when the industrial development is not busy.
That's a good point. Okay, and suggest a yes on that then. I will move on to letter J. Adequate water mains and fire hydrants shall be provided in accessible places in accordance with good firefighting and fire prevention practice. Fire chief weighed in on that, and actually so did did Terry, the water superintendent, and that they're in good shape in that regard.
Yeah, there's already a 12-inch water main out there.
Real good. So that's a yes. On to letter K, adequate provision shall be made for the collection and disposition of all on and off-site stormwater and natural water, including but not limited to on-site drainage retention facilities. And we've seen that they have a plan A and a plan B. So that would be a yes.
And just so you know, a retention facility by definition is a facility that does not have a drain, that it retains the water until it soaks into the ground. That's our plan B at this point.
Real good. Letter L, adequate provision shall be made for the collection and disposition of sanitary sewage. They'd be hooked into the town's system.
Actually, we'll be extending the public utility into Albion Way. I think 400 feet or something like that. So, and then hooking up to that new extension at our cost, by the way.
So you're extending our main actually sent off of.
Not, you mean your sewer? There's sewer in Progress Drive.
Yep.
We'll extend public sewer down Albion Way, Apostolic Way. Sorry, yeah, Apostolic Way to the property frontage. We're close to our property boundary,
Okay,
and
so-
then we would
okay.
connect to that manhole.
Okay, so you're actually providing some public infrastructure as part of the project, the extension of our main.
Unless y'all
Through a
feel
manhole.
good to do it.
What?
If y'all felt good to do it, we wouldn't stop you.
Yeah, that's right. We'll add that as a condition or something. Okay, so that's a yes. Letter M, adequate provision shall be made to avoid an increase in hazard to adjacent property from flood, increased runoff, or water damage. That's all part of the storm water protection plan that they've submitted. Yes on that. Letter N, adequate provision shall be made to clean, control, and otherwise alleviate contamination or environmental hazards on land when the site is in an area found by the plan administrator to be contaminated by a toxic substance or otherwise to contain environmental hazards which are detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. We know as part of the construction there's potential for runoff. They mitigate that as part of their stormwater protection plan. So I would say yes on that. 2 more points to go cover. Letter O, adequate provision shall be made to avoid glare of vehicular and stationary lights that would affect the established character of the neighborhood, and to the extent such lights will be visible across from any property line, the performance standards for illumination shall be met. We haven't seen their lighting plan, but that would be a presumed a thing that they would address in there as a good neighbor at a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, we'll basically give your lighting requirements, the ordinance to the lighting specialist,
Right.
and they'll design according to it.
Okay, so we would say maybe a presumed yes on that. And finally, letter P, adequate provision shall be made to ensure that the location, lighting, and type of signs and the relationship of signs to traffic control is appropriate for the site and will not have an adverse effect on any adjacent properties. That'll be subject to covered in their sign permit application.
The intent right now in the plans is basically right at the end of Apostolic Way, as you're coming in this like area just to the right of Apostolic Way as you're driving into the property, to have a monument sign, kind of a typical monument sign there.
For the church.
For the church.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, like you said, that would require a sign permit.
Mhm. So frankly, there's very little signs, really required to kind of, that are, other than what's on your property. I don't think there's too much, there's not a lot of signage out there right now. It's kind of on the town to maybe provide a street sign.
Embarrassed to say, I think we need to put a stop sign up, and obviously, there's no street sign there, but we'll obviously have to order the engineering street sign, and then also put progress sign up.
So it would seem like a yes exists for that. So we've gone through all of I believe there's 16 criteria. There was kind of a strong unanimous yes, other than the very first one. There was a question: the application shall comply with the provisions of this ordinance and other ordinances of the town. But there was one question raised on that. What at this point, Kurt, would you say?
Two things, two motions. One, making, the first one would be to make a finding that this applicant is in compliance with all of the, if that's your motion, if that's what you want to do, a motion to make a determination that the applicant is in compliance with all of the standards for review under E3. And that would be your first motion to consider. And then I'll help you with the second one, which would be to approve the application, if that's what you want to do, or approve with modifications, deny it, or continue. So first motion is whether or not you want to make a finding that the applicant is in compliance with those E3 standards for review.
I entertain that motion, as Kurt said.
That's fair, you can do that.
Yeah, I'll make the motion as.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So Kelly, was that a no?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was, sorry. Yes, that was a, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So motion basically carried, the voice vote of, what did we say, 7-1?
I think so.
Yeah, 7-1.
So Steve, your next motion for them to consider is to either approve the application, approve it with modifications, which we've talked a lot about, and I can help you with if you want to put any on there, deny it, or continue it to another hearing date to be scheduled in the future.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Who's second?
Mark, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
And Jason, you made the motion to approve, Mark, you seconded, and it was, Kelly, you said you voted no, is that correct? So
I
we,
did too.
pardon me? And Dwayne, thank you, Dwayne.
Sherry, how did you vote?
I voted with I would like to see it with modifications.
Yeah, so you voted against it.
5-3.
Five to
You still
three.
have- You still have the.
It's approved.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was counting
No,
heads.
that's all right.
This is very confusing.
Yeah.
The wording of stuff.
Yeah.
So the
it's
motion
still-
passed 5-3 then.
Can I say something?
Yes, the pastor would like to say something.
Yes. I appreciate the diversity of the board and the opinions and the, this new order that took place. And I want to assure the ones that had reservations that I want to shake your hand at the store. There's no hard feelings, as well as I want to prove to you what our church will do. And we promise these, and I would just this is off record, but I just want you to know we're going to follow through with what we said we're going to do to gain your confidence as we move forward. And we don't plan on breaking ground this year until later because of just the process. There's a lot to do. So you will have everything in hand before one shovel of dirt is turned. That's my promise to you. Now that's off record.
We're actually still being recorded.
I was gonna say, no, yeah, we're meeting is off record.
That's on record. But it is, it's a promise. But I appreciate the due process and the way that it was done, the professionalism of the dialogue.
Thank you.
So can I send you updated plans?
Yes.
Whenever, as they get updated?
Yeah, and by the way, though, any further technical review is not required per se, we're absolutely available to consult with it should you want such a meeting.
Or I could potentially communicate directly with the utility
Yes, oh, sure.
guy. Okay, what's his name?
Terry for the water and storm.
He was on the
sewer.
email, I think, one of the emails.
He is, yes. And Corey is street and storm water, or more drainage, but they partner on many of the drainage issues.
This is my favorite. So if everybody's okay with that, save Steve's headache, just keeping everything so we don't have to bring this back every time. And Steve doesn't have to make time count.
Pardon?
Where's that?
We're going to adjourn. I think.
Okay.
President.
Y'all might have to roll me back.
Oh, yeah, are we through with the AAC technical team? They want to know.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience and dialogue. It's
Yeah, this is great. We got a great city.
Thank you.
We do. Well,
We have to know when you're having the kettle corn and all that stuff.
We'll have an open house.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world with your project. I
Thank
hope
you.
everything goes as smooth as can possibly be.
Thank you so much.
And
Thanks, guys. We'll be in
any
touch.
denomination can
Thanks.
come, right?
Oh, we're really just, we just like God. How's that sound?
Amen. Me too.
Thank you.
Everybody?
I motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Imagine that.
Hey, it's the first time I've ever seconded that. I'm getting great.
Let me turn off the meeting record if you don't mind.
All right, I'll get out of your hair and I'm sure you anyway.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience and your,
I think there was a lot of good points and